All right, so I'm ready to record. So good evening and welcome to the August 5th session of Kiwanis Let's Talk, hosted by the Michigan District of Kiwanis. For those of you that I've not met, my name is Sue Peterson, and I'm a member of the East Lansing Club. And I also work with the Michigan District on leadership and education. We are now in almost our second year of these programs, which have been going on for quite some time. For those of you that are looking for this program afterwards, or you want to share it with your friends, please go to the Michigan District of Kiwanis YouTube page. All of those programs that we have held over the last year are there. And you can look at them, you can download them, you can show them to your club. They're probably a little bit longer than most club programs, but you could show it in a couple of weeks. You could attach it however you wanted to do it. So today I'm very excited to have with us Stephen McCarty. And for those of us from Michigan, we've known Stephen since he was a key leader many years ago. And you look how old he is, so not many years ago. Was born and raised in Southeast Michigan. His journey started with a Key Leader Conference and followed him through Key Club, Circle K, and now Kiwanis, where he held multiple district and international positions. Stephen studied political science and communication studies at the University of Michigan and has since built his career in community organizing, technology consulting, and digital marketing. He is the co-founder of Abolish Racism, and his true passion lies in community engagement and organizing where he can connect with others and collaborate on equitable solutions and tackling oppressive power structures. As president of the Kiwanis Club of Washington, D.C., Stephen has already taken steps to transform the club to become a more inclusive and engaged organization in the District of Columbia. When not volunteering and trying to make a difference in his community, Stephen likes to spend time with his partner, Rich, their dog, Brody, and log walks, cooking, and trying out new cocktails. So he actually might be a good person for us to use at one of our happy hours during convention, new cocktails. With that, I will turn it over to Stephen. Thank you for being with us today, Stephen. It's great. We get to see and work with Stephen on a lot of things still here in Michigan. He stays connected with us quite a bit. And he has a great presentation for us today, which I know that you will all enjoy. I will be putting a couple documents in the chat for you along the way. And if you have questions, I encourage you to put them in the chat, and then we will also take questions at the end of the session or along the way. So Stephen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sue. It's really great to be here and see plenty of both new and familiar faces. As Sue mentioned, I'm originally from Michigan and born and raised all throughout Southeast Michigan and in the Michigan Kiwanis family. So although I'm out here with the Kiwanis Club of Washington, D.C. and the Capital District of Kiwanis, I very much feel as if I'm still a member of the fantastic, amazing Michigan District of Kiwanis International. So thank you for having me, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. Today, I'm actually not going to have visuals, which is pretty unusual for me, but I thought we would make this a little more conversational and kind of run through ideas and strategies for planning events. And I do have an event checklist, which Sue's going to drop towards the end of the presentation after we've kind of talked through a lot of the bullet points that you will see on that checklist. So to get started and kind of really lay the foundation of why I'm here and why we're talking about event planning today, if any of you haven't known, we are still in the midst of a pandemic. We spent, about 18 months in some pretty strict lockdowns and are maybe looking out of the woods yet. We can't be certain, but the point is we are navigating in some uncertain times, and we still, as Kiwanians, as Kiwanis clubs, want to make sure that we continue to host meaningful events, continue all of our programming, because even though we might be in a pandemic or things come up, things out of our control, we can't let those stop us from serving our community and hosting special events that really do make a difference. And so our biggest event is actually called the Student Leader Awards. It's our annual scholarship competition. I know many Kiwanis clubs also host scholarship competitions. I myself had a Kiwanis scholarship when I was going to the University of Michigan. Shout out to the Kiwanis Club of Monroe, Michigan, for giving me that scholarship at an early age. And college is only getting more expensive. And so anything that Kiwanis clubs do to help provide scholarships and funding for children's education is always, always so important. And anyways, so the Student Leader Awards were actually founded 25 years ago. So this upcoming year will be their 25th year. And like many other Kiwanis clubs, when 2020 rolled around and we were maybe 6 weeks out from when the actual big shebang was supposed to happen, where we have hundreds of folks, sometimes the mayor comes and sometimes we have, really awesome, incredible speakers show up. We are about 6 weeks away and we are getting the news like everyone else that we need to stay in place, shelter, mask up, and really not go anywhere. So what do you do when something like that happens, when you've spent, 8 or more months planning this huge event? You have already had your committee meet to determine which students would receive scholarships. You've got members that look forward to this event every year. What do you do? Well, you have to adapt, and you have to adapt quickly. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how we were able to do that. And then also how we planned our 2021 Student Leader Awards, which were this past April, because again, while we may not have been in strict lockdown in April heading into May, things were still uncertain, and they still are today. So we had to, again, adapt to figure out the best, safest, most comfortable way for our members, our students, their families to gather for our second scholarship competition during the COVID-19 pandemic in a way that was meaningful for everybody, right? And so over the 25 years, we have given hundreds of thousands, if not really approaching $1 million in scholarships. The past 2 years, we gave out, in 2020, we gave out $62,000 in scholarships to 12 students. And in 2021, we upped that a bit and we gave about $68,000 to 12 students in the District of Columbia. And so really kind of carrying on this legacy is clearly not only important to our members, but it's important to the communities and the schools that we work with. One of the things that I really want to kind of start talking through here is, where do you start with an event? Whether it's a legacy event or a new event, you always need to have that starting place. And for us, and for me personally, it's really always about who is your audience. Now, as Kiwanians, we'll have some events where our audience will be Kiwanians, but there are also going to be events where we want to make sure we invite members of the community or specific subgroups of the community. And so it's always very, very important to have a firm understanding of who your audience is when you're planning an event. And while I just mentioned that, this is a 25-year program, it's very important to our members. Can you guess who the audience is? The audience is actually not our members, it's the students, because this is an event to recognize the students. It's not to recognize members of our club. It's not to recognize or give ourselves a pat on the back. It's to recognize the hard work of the students that we're honoring with their scholarships. And so you really always, when you're thinking about an event, again, whether it's legacy or a new event, think about who your audience is. And if you're unsure, don't be afraid to ask your board members, ask your committee members who are maybe helping you plan the event. But an event will never have true meaning or success unless you make sure it's tailored to the appropriate audience. And so again, for us, it's really those kids and the student leaders that we're honoring. The other thing that is really, really important, and I can't say this enough, is making sure your members are still engaged. When you're planning an event, again, a lot of our clubs, my club personally is over 100 years old, And I can tell you, I get a lot of, even as president from my board members, I get a lot of comments like, well, we've always hosted it at this location, or we always had it at a lunchtime or a dinner time, right? You need to make sure that your members are still engaged and that you're thinking outside of the box, because no one should ever have to plan an event alone. And in fact, I always recommend having at least another person, if not more. Hopefully you have enough folks on your side that you can form a committee, but planning anything alone is tricky because we all have our blind spots, right? If you have great eyesight, or you don't have any hearing disabilities or any physical disabilities, sometimes you don't think about making sure that the location is ADA accessible, or that you have made accommodations for certain individuals to sit near the front so they can see the projector, or that they can hear the speaker. And so it's really, really important that you don't go at it alone, and that you have other members who can help you check your blind spots and make sure that you are thinking thoroughly about everybody you're going to have at your event. Super, super important. But a little bit back to your members, it is sometimes the most difficult conversation to have as a club or as a leader or an event planner. But sometimes legacy events need to be sunset, or they need to be drastically changed. Because if an event, I can tell you personally, and as the president of the Kiwanis Club of Washington, D.C., we would not be able to continue supporting our event if we did not constantly say, hey, members, how do you see this event? How should we host this? Because if we had hosted the event like we did 10 years ago, we would not have nearly as many members attend now as we did then. And so you really have to think how you're going to adapt. And sometimes, for example, the original name of the Student Leader Awards is actually the Joe Riley Youth Awards. And Joe Riley was one of our past presidents from earlier on in our club. He was a very great man and an amazing community leader here in the District of Columbia. But there came a time when our members didn't really know who Joe Riley was. The community no longer had a firm understanding of who Joe Riley was or what our program was about. And so we had to talk as a club and as leadership and say, how do we adjust our event to make sure that it maintains its relevance and its meaning to the community? And so that is when the Joe Riley Youth Awards became the Student Leader Awards, hosted by the Kiwanis Club of Washington, D.C. And so really, I want to challenge all of you to just think critically about your audience, your membership, and the event itself. Because if you don't address those three facets before you begin planning, planning is going to be really difficult and really painful for everyone involved. So just, don't let a legacy event or the stress of a legacy event scare you into trying new things and thinking outside the box. So next, I just wanted to talk about kind of the past two scholarship rounds that we've had, which are the 2020 awards and the 2021 awards, and how we navigated through those. So as I mentioned prior, the 2020 Student Leader Awards happened in April of 2020. And thinking back to then, we were kind of dumbfounded and flabbergasted, like many other Kiwanis clubs and community leaders, and really everybody, because we had planned this event for 8+ months. We had spent thousands of dollars on a venue. We had gotten all of our RSVPs, and we had secured our speaker. We did everything we were supposed to. And sometimes you do everything that you're supposed to, and you get kicked in the shins. And so we really got kicked in the shins there, as many other people and many other Kiwanis clubs did. But what was important is that we were decisive very quickly, and we adapted very quickly. And so immediately we got postcards out. And so one of my favorite things is postcards now, because if you're not going to be able to see folks that you want to see in person as much as you used to be able to, postcard is always nice. And so we got postcards out very quickly, and they had a QR code that let them check for updates on the event, because we also were kind of thinking, well, they said 2 weeks, right? That was when we kept hearing 2 weeks, 2 weeks. So we thought 2 weeks, we'll send a postcard, we'll keep everybody updated, and hopefully we can swing this event. As all of us here know, that is not what happened. And so we did not have any sort of event in person at all. So how do you take an event that you just spent 8 months planning everything to be in person and get it online? Well, the sad truth is you can't get everything online. You just can't. And so what we ended up doing for that event was really focusing on our earned media and press relations out here in DC, so that we could get the local news channel to interview some of our scholarship kids. So luckily we were successful in doing that, which again, our goal with this scholarship competition, it's not to pat ourselves on the back, it's to make sure these kids know how special they are. And the best way to make a kid feel, one of the best ways to make a student feel special is to highlight them at such a high level of prestige as being on the local news. And so that was the first thing that we did, is we really worked hard to make sure that our local news stations knew these kids are awesome, we can't host this event, and we need you to help us recognize them. So that was really the first step. And then the second part was really we relied on social media. We can talk a little bit more about incorporating Zoom into your events now, and most people are very comfortable with Zoom now, but boy, was Zoom a very new concept to many people in April of 2020. And so the best way that we could maintain the level of engagement that we wanted was to keep it really on Facebook. And so we created videos, we created social media squares, images to share out, we tagged students, we tagged parents, we shouted out schools. And we also put paid advertising behind that as well. So we took some of the money that we were going to get refunded from the venue, and we made sure that we channeled that into making sure we had a really big splash on social media. And part of our program is not only cash scholarships, we give all of the students backpacks and laptops. So then I am sitting here in my 2-bedroom apartment in Washington, DC, and my 1-bedroom is completely filled from floor to ceiling with boxes of backpacks and laptops. And then, of course, I have to get rid of those, and we ship them with nice little note cards from our board saying congrats, and hopefully we can meet you safely in person soon. At the time, I will also say that our goal was to hang on to those backpacks and laptops for a couple of months, because we were hearing, when the summer comes around, it'll be a little safer, we can gather outdoors. We thought about maybe congratulating the students earlier when they normally would have been in April, and saying, hey, let's have a picnic celebration in the summer. Let people come out and gather distanced safely, pick up your backpacks and laptops. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but I'm throwing that out there because it's a really good idea. If you have to cancel an event, you have to change anything about the event, keep it casual, have something fun. Like the community, these students, especially the student populations that you're working with, they don't care if they're coming to a 5-star restaurant and need their sports coats and evening gowns. They really want to feel recognized and seen and heard. And that is the point of any scholarship program or event that you host with your service leadership programs or any youth. And so don't get tied up, don't tie yourself up ever in the quest to make it some big, spectacular, formal event. That's never needs to be the case. And if it is, I would challenge you to think critically about why you're hosting the event, if you feel so strongly that it does need to be to such a high and formal magnitude. In 2021, things were a little different. We had started to ease some of our COVID-19 restrictions. The vaccination rate in many communities, especially in DC, had gotten rather high. A high percentage of folks were vaccinated out here. And so again, we had a chat with our board and say, what's our call? Are we going to host this all online? We are very much better equipped now than we were in 2020 to host this online. So what do we do? And we decided that we would do a hybrid event. So we did both an in-person and an online portion of the scholarship reception. So a couple of things that we worked through there. One was Zoom can be tricky to host live events. Obviously, we're all here now, but when you're switching speakers, you're trying to present things, you're trying to give students certificates and introduce them, it gets really tricky and really complicated. And so we said, let's not do a Zoom because we don't want to have somebody also moderate that, right? Like Sue is here admitting people and helping make sure folks are muted and making sure this is being recorded. We wanted to be able to enjoy the event ourselves and really spend time with the students and their families and the members that were able to come be with us in person. And so we ended up hiring a company to come and live stream the actual event itself. So the actual event itself, of course, we were doing our best to maintain, we absolutely did follow local and CDC COVID-19 guidelines. And so at that time, we knew that we could only have a max of 50 attendees with us in person. And the science said that we would be safer if we were outdoors and socially distanced. So we found a venue that would give us a tent, and we would have access to an indoor area for restrooms and things like that. And we could also sit outside, be socially distanced, and live stream the event from there. So we really kind of did those two in tandem. And I will say the kind of cherry on top for our virtual attendees was we created what we called virtual event kits. And so folks could purchase an event kit and have it shipped directly to their, place of residence. And in that event kit, we had a little program that, basically said, here's how to join the live stream on the day of the event. We try to incorporate some fun things. We added a t-shirt, and we also put on the card, take a selfie of yourself in your t-shirt and send it to us so we can post on Facebook, hey, look at all the people who joined us in person and online, right? Because things are never really going to get any less digital beyond this point. There's very much going to be an expectation of other opportunities of engagement that are not in person. We've almost been doing it for 2 years now, and it's going to continue that way. And so thinking strategically about having folks join you online also entails making sure that they feel engaged when they're joining you online. And so those virtual event kits were really great opportunities for us to make sure that the folks at home could feel like they were part of the event. They got a little snack, they got a t-shirt, they got a card telling them how to join, and they also got some stickers, right? And so it was just fun, it was easy, it was cute, and it really did, we got a lot of pictures, we got a lot of people posting on their own social media using hashtags. It was very successful. Now in person, again, we were able to find that venue that met all of our needs and in a short amount of time. So we were very lucky. And I will also say we had phenomenal speakers. So we had one speaker who actually founded a national mental health nonprofit that focuses on making sure that everyone has access to affordable quality mental health care. And we also found a speaker that was a student themselves, but that student had founded an organization called One Up Action. And One Up Action sponsors local chapters of high school students to think critically and address challenges of climate change within their own communities. So when I was thinking about these speakers and inviting folks to come and attend, again, I was thinking back to my audience, right? My audience is not necessarily my Kiwanis members, it's the students. And so again, those students really, really deserve to hear someone speak to them. And we really lucked out. Both of our speakers spoke directly to our students. They spoke to our students about their leadership, about, you know, changing their communities and their schools, and about being young student active leaders. And so again, when you're thinking about those speakers, yes, it's always great. I personally, I would love to have certain people come and speak at my events. And I know some of our members have their own opinions about who they want to hear at events, but really always think back to your audience, because if you want these students to remember you, remember that experience, remember the scholarship, right? They need to have something that really spoke to them and touched them. And so again, always, always, always think about your audience. And so, between those two events, we really, really learned a lot. And I would say, I'll talk a little bit more about some of like the accessibility accommodations that we pushed ourselves to make later on when we think a little more strategically about event planning. But I'm going to kind of start going into more logistical aspects of the event planning process, and then we'll open it up to questions. So all that said and done, when you have an event, it's new or legacy, when do you start? So depending on the scale of an event, if you're hosting especially like a scholarship competition, I would say start planning at least 8 months in advance, if not longer. I really personally love to like turn around, and if we really like the venue, you turn around and say, hey, can we do this again next year? Let's get a contract, let's set a date. The earlier you plan and you secure those contracts, the more luck you're going to have. You're going to get a better rate. And you might even consider saying, what if we pick out a few years in advance? Let's have it here, in 2021 and 2022 and 2023. You might be able to even negotiate a better contract that way. That's totally up to you and your club, your leadership, and where you see the event going in the next couple of years. I will say, when you're if you negotiate contracts out more long-term, again, make sure your members are engaged, make sure the community is engaged, because the last thing I want any Kiwanis club to do is lose out on some money because they paid for a deposit at a venue 3 or 4 or 5 years in advance, and they can only host the event for another 2 or 3 years. So really, again, think about where this event is going and what your members are really interested in. And I just made a comment on my notes. The longer the runway, the easier the climb. It goes with everything. So again, but there's that prior planning prevents poor performance, that one. So just plan, and include as many people as you can. Again, I know we have everybody's a different type of leader. You have your own kind of style, but collaboration really is key when you're planning events, because it's not going to be the Steven show or the Sue show or the Vicky show. It's going to be reflective of your Kiwanis club as a whole at the end of the day. And the last thing you want is for somebody to be upset that something didn't happen or something wasn't included. One of the big things that I think that, well, personally, I've seen other clubs not succeed in, and this goes for Kiwanis and any other community organization I've worked with, because I've worked with a few, is marketing. So marketing is, especially digital marketing, is a relatively new field. And like I said, we're not going back. And so how do you make sure that you're engaging folks digitally, online, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever your audience is? How are you making sure that you're engaging them online early enough, during, and after your event to make sure that your event is a success? And so I really want to encourage all of you to think about what your marketing channels look like. So for us, we have a weekly newsletter. I think most Kiwanis clubs do have a weekly newsletter, but we use that to message a lot about our upcoming events and especially our large events. I will also add to the email newsletter. I had to start breaking this mold when I joined our club and started taking over some of our marketing. Is I was told we only send the newsletter once a week. It goes out at Tuesday at 10 a.m. and the secretary is the only one that can put stuff in it. We only say X, Y, and Z. That's all. We had to break that. We had to shake up the newsletter. We had to say, there are going to be times when we need to send more than one email a week, right? I mean, we would not have been able to navigate through so much uncertainty and educate our members on what to expect for that event in 2020 or the event in 2021 if we did not send consistent, regular, thoughtful communication. And so don't let old habits keep you from innovating. I would also say social media. Social media is interesting in the sense that it really does depend on your audience. So I've had folks that were very nervous about us putting out like event signups and things like that on our Facebook, because they said, well, what if someone shows up? Like, what if we don't know that person? They just stumble upon our Facebook and show up at this event. Well, you have to think about that, right? And so what I always do, because my personal philosophy for myself and for my club is Kiwanis is there for the community and we want the community to be there for us. Therefore, I don't really want us to have closed channel marketing. I want us to make sure that everybody knows, they should see that we're having meetings. They should see that we're having events. They should see that publicly so that they don't think that we die, the club suspended its membership or charter a couple of years ago, right? And so we really do want to see and show to folks that we are an active and engaging club. And so I will say, if you are worried about maybe having someone that you don't know show up to an event, sign up for an event, have someone, it can be yourself, it can be your committee member, it can be your secretary, walk through that list maybe on a weekly basis, that sign up list or folks who have purchased tickets. If you don't see a name you recognize, you should always be collecting at least phone number and email. Send them an email, give them a call. It's not an interrogation, it's not an interview. It can be as easy as, hey, my name is Steve McCarty with the Kiwanis Club of Washington, D.C. So excited to see that you signed up and purchased a ticket for our Student Leader Awards. I was just really curious to get to know a little more about you and how you found out about an event. It can be that easy, that natural and conversational. And 9 times out of 10, we can convert those types of signups into members. And so don't be scared to have, your sign up list, your ticket purchasing links out in the open, because the worst that's going to happen is you get a new advocate, you get a new evangelist, or you get a new member. I already talked about this earlier, but you also want to think about earned media. And so what local news stations, radio stations, the local newspaper, things like that, you want to think about who you're going to talk to, but also like how you're going to pitch your story. And so it will vary greatly depending on who you're reaching out to. So always think critically again about who you're going to reach out to and what you're going to say when it comes to earned media. Paid media, again, that's like paying for Facebook ads or Twitter ads or even Google ads, paying for those sorts of things. I only recommend doing paid media if you really truly feel comfortable in understanding your audience, because again, doing paid advertising, it requires a keen sense to your audience's online behaviors. And so you really have to make the call of, does my audience live on Facebook? Do they live on Twitter? Do they live on Instagram, right? And it's okay if you don't have a strong enough sense of that. I would just say, put your money elsewhere. Make another scholarship, do something to benefit the kids if you're looking for another way to like spend money or get more folks involved. The other thing I already mentioned as well, are those like postcards, flyers, things, right? So we've gotten to the habit of sending 3 or 4 postcards a year. They always have a QR code. Everybody knows the little barcodes that you see nowadays when you go to restaurants or, and so we put those on everything now. And I'm also here to tell you that those are at an all-time high for popularity, and it's not going anywhere. So really think strategically again about how to put QR codes on your promotional materials, especially because what I will say is a postcard, I like something clean and fun and unique. If you're going to send a postcard, you're not going to be able to get every single detail about your upcoming event on that postcard. So put the top lines on there, put maybe your head speaker, put a quote, put a photo, and then have that QR code and let your audience, your supporters, your members go to your website and get the rest of the information. I would also say for your timeline on marketing, you don't want to start too early, but you don't want to start too late. So I always start, depending on how many folks I need to get at the event, 2 to 3 months in advance. If you start too early, you risk of audience fatigue. So people will see your communications so much that they zone out when they see, student leader awards, RSVP today. If you start sending the RSVP email 6 months before the event, people's eyes will just gloss over and then they'll forget. And then you're going to be mad dashing like, hey, Sue, you always attend this event. Why haven't you signed up? And Sue will probably say, oh, wait, oh yeah, that has been in the newsletter for 6 months. I'm so sorry. I just overlooked it. And so make sure that you don't start too early and you don't start too late. And again, I encourage you to combine, physical marketing with QR codes, digital marketing, and email marketing, especially. And then, of course, you want to talk about it at your meetings. But again, consider your audience and understand that you need to do more than talk about it at your meeting because you want people other than your own solid core of active Kiwanians at that event. And so make sure that you talk about it in person and at your meetings, but that you do so much more when it comes to marketing. The other item that is marketing adjacent is sponsorships. And so I will say our club is very lucky to have backing from our foundation. Our foundation covers most of our scholarship program. So we don't have a huge strain on feeling the need to get sponsors, but I always reach out to as many local sponsors as possible, even if we don't need, we don't need the advertisement, we don't need the funding, right? It makes a difference because it helps other individuals, other organizations know who you are, know that you're out there, know that you are helping students and youth and children in your community. If I had all the money I ever needed to host an event, I would still get sponsors. If I, it's work. I know people don't like asking other people for money, but it is so important to make sure that you have a solid web or network of sponsors because, again, who's your audience? Your audience is not always going to be just Kiwanians. So you want to make sure that your sponsors are from the community and that they're engaged. Now, planning planning for accommodations is a really big thing that I want to challenge, again, all of you and all of Kiwanis clubs to think very strategically about. I can tell you personally and honestly that if I receive an invite to an event and maybe it's the event location or, the speaker, if it doesn't appeal to me, if I don't see myself in the invitation, I'm probably not going to go. And what do I mean by that? So for example, I live in Washington, D.C. I do not own a car. I usually take the bus or I take the subway to wherever I'm going. If someone were to host an event that was not accessible by public transportation, guess what? I'm not going. And so you really have to think about everything strategically. So where is your event? Can folks get there via public transportation if necessary? Is it easy to find, right? I mean, if it's something tucked away off the side of the highway, even if you do have a car, how many times are you going to drive by that until you just throw up your hands and give up? You want to think about visual audio. And so again, like I mentioned earlier, if you know folks, maybe are harder of hearing, they need to sit closer to the stage, closer to speakers. If they are visually impaired, they need to sit closer to the stage, closer to the projector so they can see. And that is really on you as a host or your host committee to make sure that you understand that from your members. So I always leave like a note section when I'm having people register for my events so that that's where they tell me I'm vegetarian, I need to see close to the stage so I can see. You really, really, really want to make sure that your members have the space to tell you what they need, but that they also feel comfortable telling you what they need. So, so, so important. And then again, I will tell you, if you're hosting things like online, the large percentage of people that view videos online view them without volume and are watching captions. And so think about, there are many tools, both free and paid, that you can use to caption your videos. Super, super, super important. I can tell you that I am a little hard of hearing myself. And so whenever I'm watching, even if it's Netflix at home, I have those subtitles on. They make me feel comfortable. They keep me engaged in whatever I'm watching, right? And so you want to think about these things. And if, here in DC, we have a large deaf community. And so we always want to think, do we need like an ASL interpreter at this event? And again, it's really, really, really about understanding your audience, but also making sure that they feel comfortable enough to ask you for those. If you're not going to provide the accommodations, you better make sure that your attendees have an opportunity to request accommodations. So I'm not saying you have to have an ASL interpreter at your event, but please, please, please have somewhere where your attendees can say, I'm hard of hearing, I'm visually impaired. And then it's on you to reach out and say, do I need to seat you close to the stage, or do we need to get an interpreter? So it's not necessarily a one size fits all, but really, really strongly encourage you to make sure that there is that space in that room for folks to ask for those accommodations. A couple of other logistics, because I know we're getting close to 9 and I want to make sure folks have opportunity to ask questions. Always, always, always have a run of show. Sometimes I'll tell you, I will like to speak off the cuff sometimes, and I'm usually pretty good at vamping, but you don't want someone to get in front of people or on a podium and then go blank. So always, always, always have a run of show. And you need to practice pronunciations ahead of time. Practice pronunciations ahead of time. I even have a pretty simple last name and I get it mispronounced all the time. And it's okay. I don't hold grudges, but it can be very off-putting, right? If I'm walking up stage to receive a scholarship or an award or an honor and someone doesn't pronounce my name correctly, I'm bummed. Like that just kind of, it sours most of the experience for an individual. And so it's really on you as an event host to make sure that you understand how to correctly pronounce individuals' names. Another thing that our club is starting doing is making sure that we have pronouns on name tags. It's a really big thing, especially for younger folks, myself included. You can see on even my Zoom name, I have Steve McCarty, he, him, his. I don't want folks to question how they should address me. And so it's really important, again, to make sure that people feel welcome and included, and giving your attendees the space to give their pronouns is really important. A couple of other things about like seating, which are really cool that we've done, are one, make sure we specifically do assigned seating. And I'll tell you, we do assigned seating because if we didn't, all of our Kiwanians, they love each other. They would sit sit together at the same tables, and then we would have our students and their parents and high school counselors all off in their own little world. We don't want that, right? Like, we're here to congratulate them, to make them feel special. And so we always do seated arrangements so that we can make sure we have, a counselor, parents, a student, and some Kiwanians all mixed together at a table. And we also have done some really cute like little cards that we put on the table that have like icebreakers and things like that, so that when you are mixing up new groups of people, they don't sit there with their hands crossed until, someone breaks the ice. You've got something in front of you that you can turn to your left, turn to your right, and say, hey, where did you go to school? Or, hey, what's your favorite color? And so something, again, just to really make people feel comfortable. And again, I would say, it's really all about inclusion. If you, trust me, I would love to see 150, 200 people at my event, right? But I'm not going to get them there unless they feel like it's a welcoming, safe, inclusive environment. And so all these things I'm telling you are to help make sure that your meetings and your events are just that. And so one of the other kind of things that I wanted to run by everybody here is, even when thinking about location, I can tell you our club used to meet at, it's called the University Club in Washington, D.C. It's a fancy membership club. You need a sports coat to go in, those sorts of things. I own a sports coat, I own a couple of suits, but not everybody does. And especially when we're working with underserved communities and youth, like, they're not going to come if you tell them it's black tie, you have to bring a tuxedo, right? They're not going to come. They need the scholarship money, but they don't need to go out and try to, rent or buy a tuxedo. And so again, think about your audience, because if you put too much pressure on them, they're not going to show up. They just won't. It's a margin of returns there, and you're going to lose. So just really make sure that you're thinking about that. Last couple of things that I just want to talk about is also make sure that if you are incorporating technology into your event or your meetings, don't let it intimidate people. One of the biggest reasons why we did not try to host our event in 2020 on Zoom was because it was so new to our members. I can tell you, like, we broke up individual members as a board that we knew were older and might have trouble with Zoom. And we did phone calls and emails and said, hey, we really want to make sure that first, we want to make sure you're safe and healthy. But also, we want to make sure you feel like you can come to our meetings now that they're online and they're on Zoom. So do you need help downloading Zoom? Do you need help getting set up? Those sorts of things. So really don't let it intimidate you or other people. And then, of course, always have a backup plan. One of the big things that you don't want to do is just cancel. You want to at least have something for, the students in our case to reflect on, to feel good about. And so even if, whether it's rain or a pandemic, have some sort of backup plan and set a hard date for when the backup plan kicks in. Because again, you just want to make sure everybody is included and feels comfortable. And then my last kind of thing that I wrote was, always just remember that your signature events are not your legacy. They do not make your club. Now you see my dog. They do not make your club. It's okay to adapt. And in fact, if we're going to keep hosting incredible, meaningful, community-oriented events, we need to adapt. And so with that, that's really all I had to say. So first, thank you all for listening to me yap for an hour. I hope you pulled out some very helpful or slightly helpful tips that you can employ when either, planning your club meetings, planning large scale events, or even, when you go to your next district convention. Write your pronouns on your name tag. Leave feedback on those feedback cards and say, hey, I noticed you didn't give me a field to make specific requests for accommodations, right? You all are part of, if you're not planners, that's fine. If you're just attendees, you also have a huge part to play in making sure that events are planned well and successful and are inclusive. So thank you all.
Stephen, thank you so much. You had great information. And if you'll notice, I actually put on the bottom of the transcription. I didn't realize that I could do that. And I'm very impressed with how good it is in Zoom and how there. So we had a few people that had to leave us, but what kind of questions do you have for Stephen? I will take him off of the, put him on the gallery. So there we go. So he doesn't have to look at his face the whole time like everybody else, did. But what kind of questions do we have for Stephen? Okay, Vicky, go ahead. You have to unmute, Vicky.
Unmute, Vic.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't necessarily have a question, but this was really good information, Stephen, because I sat on two big events, one for our downtown Kiwanis Club of Kalamazoo and one for Pretty Lake Camp, both 100-year anniversaries. And of course, it happened before, though they both happened before COVID. And so you really added a whole new several layers to this regarding virtual meetings and what to do and all the other aspects of advertising for this type of event in now and in the future. This is very helpful.
Thank you.
They're not usually shy. Just give them a minute. They're thinking.
So
Go ahead, Brad.
one thing, as we return to some in-person events and everything, one thing I noticed with Kiwanis, particularly the 4 years that I was with the downtown club, was the importance of parking. Particularly if you have a club that has older demographics. We thought we were being young and hip and trendy to move up to the top of the One America Tower, the tallest place in the state, and have a great view, and it was very modern and everything. But when I talked to a lot of members, they were more concerned about the fact that they had to circle around in a very tight parking garage in order to find a space, and then they had to take 37 elevator up 37 stories and all of that. So it didn't really have some of the cachet that I really thought it would have. And the same is true. Yeah, I can tell you, even last night, meeting my wife for dinner, I went into Broad Ripple and I couldn't find a parking space. And I called her and I said, hey, you're not here yet, but parking's impossible. Let's just go north and find someplace else, So I never underestimate the importance of, having either ground parking or something that's very easy, or valet. And then valet, you have to worry about whether there's an untoward cost to that really adds to the event cost. So just wanted to throw that out for consideration too.
Yeah, absolutely. Parking, yes, we still, even though we're in a downtown metro area, yes, we have to make sure parking is nearby. We have to make sure that there's ramps to enter the building, elevators. If, you just really, really have to think through all of those things and make sure that your members feel comfortable and welcome.
And you probably even have more of them. You have to be close to the subway, the metro or whatever,
Yep.
That sort of thing.
I think over the years, for some of us that are older, things have gone from, look, this is the way it's going to be, deal with it, to no, there's different people have different needs and we need to accommodate them. Have you run into situations where you just say, I'm sorry, we can't do that, or it just becomes, at what point do you say the practicality or the expense outweighs the trying to accommodate what each individual might need?
Yeah, so that is a really good question. I hope that's the toughest question I get tonight, Greg. But so I would say that, yes, there will be points in time where, you can't afford to hire an ASL interpreter. If you can't afford to hire an ASL interpreter, what are your secondary options? Sometimes it might, sometimes I've had to ask, actually, our past event, we had someone who was hard of hearing, and she said that she did not need an interpreter. But I said, would it make you more comfortable if I printed off the run of show and gave it to you? So things like that, even if, like you can't shell out $500 or $1,000 to hire an interpreter, you can print the run of show. And so I would say 9 times out of 10, you can find some sort of equitable solution. It might not be ideal. It might not be like your imagined solution that you initially thought of, but when there's a will, there's a way. And if I ever found myself in a situation where I thought, I just can't do this, I would go to that individual to whom, for whom the accommodation was being made. And you just have to say, I can't do that, but what can I do? Because again, and you never want to say, we can't do that. It's, we can't do that, but what can I do to make you comfortable? What can I do to ensure that you are satisfied with your experience at this event? And hopefully you can find a way to just make it happen.
All right, Jerry, I'm going to go with Jerry next and then Brad, or not Brad, but Bob Williams.
Oh, I was just amazed at the content that Stephen had. It's all like, I don't think I'd ever want to get in that job because I don't think I could ever keep up with him. But I decided to charge it off to the fact that that's what you get when you have a University of Michigan college degree.
Yes, go blue.
but I have a niece that has a master's in communications, and hers is from Michigan State. And I'd say you and she could probably could keep up with it together with it. For me, I don't know how I would feel so, disadvantaged to try to follow. I mean, have you done this at various levels leading up to this, or did you as president inherit this and you just took it from there, or did you have some lead into this over the years?
Yeah, so I'll say that in Key Club and Circle K, I was in Key Club, I was a district chair. In Circle K, I was a governor, and I helped plan a couple of conventions. And so I was international vice president of Circle K. So I also helped plan a convention. So I do have a leg up in some of the event planning. But with that being said, at the Kiwanis School of Washington, D.C., it was a legacy event. I'll be honest, when I stepped into the role of helping plan the event for the past 2 years, I did get a lot of, we always had it at the Reagan building downtown. And I kept hearing, well, this subset of members really likes this location. And so it really was sort of starting all over again in many aspects. But I never really got discouraged because, again, it's just really who is your audience, and you have to be able to challenge both yourself and your members to make sure that you're planning effectively and appropriately.
And Stephen, I will echo, I think, who's your audience? I mean, that is just such a great question to ask yourselves when you're doing that training or that planning, because we often tend to plan for ourselves, or what, like you said, what has been done in the past. And, we know things have changed. I mean, we've gone to, to Zoom calls and Teams calls, and, things don't happen like they used to, but who is your audience? Because you're right. I don't need to impress my club members. I need to impress the people that are in my room. So Jerry, hold on, Greg, let me go. Jerry.
Well, my first meeting at the Detroit Athletic Club, I was on a semester break. So I put on a sharp, expensive denim suit. When I hit that door, the door person touched my suit. He says, "Is that denim?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You can't wear denim in here." Now, it wasn't blue jeans. You got me? But it was denim. And so he says, "Well, do you live near here?" And I said, "No." He says, "Well, can you go home and come back?" I'm like, "No." So I went to my car and I opened the trunk and my dry cleaning was in there. So I wiggled into a sweater and a skirt. I walked back in. He said, "Whoa, that was quick." I said, "I know, this is my first meeting and I didn't know about the denim." Then I had the membership. I had somebody said, "Well, if you would have had your orientation through me, you would have known you couldn't wear no denim up in here." And I'm like, yeah, well, the clothes in the car saved me. So I didn't miss my first meeting. So Steve is absolutely right.
Mhm.
Everybody doesn't have a suit coat. And sometimes they do have suit coats and ties to share with you. So when I became president of number one, oh, you know, I told everybody how to dress because I didn't want anybody getting turned away. Matter of fact, I sent them the clip. You know, he says information is important. I sent the rules of the dress to everybody I invited. So we wouldn't have that problem, and we did. And there was one other thing, you know, we can train up some interpreters and check with, he said, know your people and your organizations. Sometimes students, I know at Madonna here, they would love to do something for free to get the experience of doing the sign language. So it was excellent. Oh, I will be watching this again. I'm glad you recorded it.
Gotcha, Stephen. Greg, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when Stephen talks about who's your audience, I remember I was at this one Kiwanis Club meeting, and they were talking about getting new members, and they said, well, what are we going to change? And they said, well, you know, we've always done singing, but we like the singing. We're going to keep it. And I'm thinking, well, okay, but the people you're trying to attract, would they like the singing? And so, you know, I think they took the kind of the wrong direction with that. So,
Right.
Yeah, and then I would add, you know, like Jerry mentioned, we just never want anyone to be turned away. I'm really glad that Jerry had her clothes in her car and was able to get there. But it's right. You know, some people don't bounce back from an experience like that. And so, you know, part of that is in orienting members and folks before they arrive at your event. But also, I can tell you, when we are inviting students and their families to our events, it's always, do you have access to transportation? Do I need to send you a gift card for Uber? Do you have clothes that would be okay for you to wear? We really try to cover all of those bases because, again, this event is for them, and we want all of them to show up and to feel comfortable showing up.
I like the idea about the QR code. We put stickers on everything at the book warehouse, and it doesn't say anything. It's not informational. So when I mentioned it to it, I said barcode, because I don't know the tech language. And why would we put a barcode? And I said, well, it's one that you can put the application on it, how to join, da-da-da-da-da. So the next stickers we're supposed to be getting, they're supposed to have the QR code on them. Because come on now, we may be the first club, but we need to be first in that too, in that technology.
Well,
so
and I think that
I'm glad you said that.
Like you said, QR code. Everybody, we're all used to using it now when we go to a restaurant, right? Here's the menu.
Exactly.
QR code. Before you'd say QR code and people would look at you like you were nuts. But now it's such part of what we do by asking for that QR code. All right, well, it is 9:09. And I don't want to keep, I know we can keep Stephen here all night, and I know that many of you have other things to do tonight. So any last question? All right, well, I will go ahead and turn off our recording now. Thanks, Stephen, for being with us tonight. And I will open it up. We will go ahead and put this on the Michigan District of Kiwanis YouTube page as soon as I can get it downloaded this evening. And we'll post it as well. And I encourage you to share it. with your clubs and your, heck, even your other organizations you belong to. There's some great information on here that would be great for sharing. So with that, thank you for being with us tonight. I officially end the meeting. Turn off